If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
Blah blah blah, blah blah.
Sending out good vibes,
Blah blah
good vibes,
blah,
good vibes,
blah blah.
good vibes, good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection, and put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track, shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. Coming at you this week with Wade Richardson, the Psychedelic MindMeld. It's an interesting one, to say the least. We have the Psychedelic MindMelder, Graham Dunlop, in his robe.
I was just thinking about having a better robe, a more magical robe, like the one that Nikki the dude had at our Contact at the Cabin, you know.
Wasn't it a Snoop Dogg robe?
Made by Snoop. I don't know.
On a Snoop robe?
I wish it was, I guess that's like a Snoop smoking jacket, really. But
This is what I call mine, a smoking jacket.
this is what I love this episode, though. This with Wade. I mean, I really think he's onto some important stuff. This telepathy via psychedelics. It's just another important avenue for research.
Psychedelic telepathy.
Things happen that are beyond synchronicity. They cannot just be coincidence. This is just more proof. You throw more proof in the bucket, not proof, more evidence in the bucket that we're not living in a materialistic paradigm.
Yeah, I agree. It's we're talking to Rick Strassen. I'm interested to see if it's something he could try when he's got everyone all jacked up on DMT.
Yeah, right.
You gotta shut them cats up, man. They're taking over the place. This is out of control. It's officially out of control.
I got it muted.
They're overrunning the place. It's he has a carpeted walls downstairs. They're gonna be climbing up your studio wall.
Yeah.
Or to see a cat climbing up the back wall.
Those are the front walls. Yeah, the reno's going good. I was hung the drywall today. Drywall's hung.
You have to tape in mud?
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Yeah, that's all I got left to do, really. I mean, and then the electrical guys have to fix a couple things, but just taping, mudding, and painting, and it'll be ready. The studio will be ready. The office will be ready
For the Christmas debut?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, pretty close.
New Year's debut. Definitely starting off the new year in the new studio.
Yes, definitely. Then, yeah.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
I will be here. Still here.
It's been actually fun. I've been learning lots. I mean, drywall's it's been a bit finicky, and just building the walls and what?
Drywall's the worst. It's the worst shit.
It hasn't been that bad. I mean, we had to redo one of the walls like 4 or 5 times. And it was like we were squeezing it between the Perry post. Is it those Perry posts? Is that what they're called?
Yeah, pretty much like the short post.
Yeah, they're built into these basements. I don't know if it's in Alberta and Saskatchewan or everywhere, but they all have these posts underneath the beam.
Usually there's one in the middle at least.
Yeah, there's 3, I think, down here. So we just built the wall along that beam, underneath that beam, so that we can hide the posts, and then it just split the downstairs in half, basically. So we have a big room, and then we're going to expand the bathroom in the back, and then go around that way to the laundry room because we walled off the furnace area. So then my office is next to the furnace on the other side.
Between the furnace and the laundry room?
No, it's the furnace is between me and the laundry room.
Oh, that's good. You got a buffer.
It's pretty quiet, actually. I'm going to put soundproof insulation in the walls around the studio too. Like it's already in the ceiling in some spots, but I'm going to do it in the walls too, just to just to add that little buffer because it already sounds super quiet in there. It feels quiet already just with the carpet.
Feels dead. Remember the first studio had that dirty old carpet stapled to the walls?
Yeah.
The carpet off the floor. Where'd that carpet come from? It was gross anyway.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was the old living room carpet from upstairs because I moved in. It was full of cigarette burns and stuff. So we pulled it out and put in the tile, the like laminate, and we put it on the walls of the basement studio. Imagine like dust mites in there.
Did I help you do that?
I don't know if you helped or not. You probably did because you were like, we were still doing it all in studio back then.
Yeah, maybe. I remember having the carpet on the walls there, but I didn't realize. I don't know if I remember it being super.
Remember Joey was coming?
We must have cleaned it up and stuff.
I mean, you could only clean it up so much. It was just a dusty old 10-year-old, 19-year-old carpet on the walls.
The heebie-jeebies now, just thinking about it.
That's where I got those bed bugs.
Just a room full of dust mites.
I think we had the carpet on the wall when we first talked to Randall Carlson. No window or nothing. There was that shitty old window that was like under the deck. I don't think it would open though, right? It was unopenable. And then there's the other back window that just went out into like a pile of trash. Yeah. It was a shithole. I mean, it was a proper shithole. But here we are. We made it. We persevered.
Yeah, we made it.
We made it.
So do you have any hunting stories or anything like that? Or
well, I shot some ducks. I shot some ducks on the river. The river's pretty frozen. From the cold, I mean, it's been warm, but it's still like, we walked over the pond to get to the river. There's plenty of ice there. I don't know how much, but I'm guessing like almost a foot. I bet at least 6 inches. Can't see through it at all. And then we went down the river and jump shot some ducks. You probably do maybe all right with some decoys down there. I don't know.
What does that mean? Jump shot? That means like you get out of the truck and just jump into the field and shoot. What?
No, we were like walking. We like find them on the river because the river's small, so they're always like on close to one shore. It can't be in the middle because it's moving too quick. You just find some that are on your shore, and then what happens is there's lots of like puddles and sloughs all along your shore as well. So ideally, if you can find like a little backwater eddy or a little like fucking just a little offshoot of the river that is moving just enough to not freeze, especially when it's been around zero, is good weather for it. And you'll find the ducks in there. Big ducks right now too. Big fucking ducks.
So you jump down and shoot away? Like
you just kind of jump shoot, you just run up and then you like jump them and then they start flying and then you blast them. We jump shot 4.
That's fun. That sounds like the most fun type.
Nah, the most fun is having a flock of thousands of waterfowl like circling over top of you and waiting for them as they get closer and closer and stuff. But it's all fun. Wasn't fun, I wouldn't be doing it. I mean, the sketchy thing is you just got to watch down at the river around now because the edges are iced. So it's an icy river. Can't really go out on the ice. It's not like if you stay super close to the edge, you can maybe go on it, but you want to watch because if you slip and fall in, you're going to have a hell of a time getting out on the ice. And you have waders that'll fill up with water. It's just a bad scene. Best to avoid. Definitely wouldn't want to be down there by yourself. And I mean, it just sucks walking through the deep snow, dude. My legs are still sore. I was just out last weekend, shot them deer and them rabbits, and it was like I think we did 14K, so that's like what 8 miles, 8 or 9 miles in like fucking Sorel winter boots, heavy as shit through a foot of snow. And then again even yesterday, I think I did 6K.
Yeah, that's good on the legs. Yeah. Wow.
But it's 6K through that deep snow, so it's just postal. Beats the shit out of your legs. It's too much. Yeah. And I built a shed, my little canvas shed, and put a starter in my quad.
Nice.
A half starter.
Been a good week. It's flown by. I can't believe it's already a week since we're doing this intro. I mean, I feel like we just did it.
We just did it. We did it on Monday last week too, I think, didn't we?
I know. I think it's been a full week. It's crazy.
Well, we can mention now that the Azores are on sale.
Right.
Have we talked
Big,
about
big
that yet?
big news. Well, we did talk about it, but we didn't. I don't think it was open to the public. It was open to, the newsletter recipients and people that would ask us for the code. Now it's open to everybody, right?
Just open for sale. It's already 1/3 sold, so it's looking to be a popular event. You can just make a deposit if you don't want to pay for the whole thing right away, but you probably definitely do if you're thinking it's something you want to do. It's a pretty limited capacity event as it is. So like 1/3 sold means like 16 spots left, like 8 couples. So could fill up fast. It's the kind of thing that in a week or two, it's been going fast. It's only the pre-sale was on for a week before the 3 days of sales. So we're selling more than a ticket a day right now. And it's not like we have a ton of room to keep scaling it up like we do some places. We got flights to catch over there. There's 3 inter-island flights. So we got to fly from Furnace, or I guess Puerto Delgado, wherever the airport is. But we got to fly from San Miguel to Terceira, and from Terceira to Pico, and then you got from Pico back to San Miguel so you can fly home. So all that kind of logistics. And the other thing is there's just not a lot of huge places. There's not a lot of big places in the Azores. All the places are like, it's hard to find places to fit all these, 30, 40, 50 people. So we're not going to have room to keep jacking this one up like we do sometimes. So if you want to come to that first one next November, get that deposit in now, make it happen.
And the other thing is that we don't really sell this part of it enough. Is like we get we do a Zoom call, a pre-Zoom call with Randall and the team. Like we get a private Zoom call with Randall, going over some of his theories about this will be fascinating because he'll be talking about Atlantis. So not the the Scablands and the regular Washington flood stuff, but this will be like Atlantis and the Azores and the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and then we'll be like we get to see his presentations and others, I think, as well during the trip, like at nighttime. We get to talk about the Atlantis being in the Azores.
Absolutely. It's going to be wild.
And some audiobooks too. And so like, it's not just like, we're not just wandering around. Like we get to watch some awesome presentations on it too. And audiobooks on it. You get some free audiobooks.
And Matt Apocalypse is coming.
Yeah.
He said he's going to do a presentation.
That's right.
If you don't remember who that is, that's the other Atlantis guy that we had on this show probably 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, he had some fascinating stuff with, I think, was that the one that was lining up with some of the Giza and Gobekli Tepe in the UK.
Yeah, like they went from there to Egypt, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. So, I mean, it is quite amazing. It's going to be an amazing trip. It's an amazing location, very picturesque volcanic islands with a ton of hot springs. There's a overnight Pico camping add-on where when we're on Pico, you can go the one night, hike up to the top of Mount Pico and stay up there overnight and come back down in the morning and just see some crazy stars. It is a quite strenuous hike. So that's why we did it as an add-on, because we know a lot of people won't be able to make it up there. It's not like a super dangerous hike, but it's
just not something everybody wants to do.
Not something everyone wants to do, and you're gonna have to be in decent shape to get up there. It's a steep climb. Not dangerous, but steep. A long time of climbing up steep hill. So it's not expensive. It's an extra $180 or $150 or something like that. That gets you that. The pictures look phenomenal. They really do. I think I will probably do it. I think I'll do it. What about you?
I'll see I'll see if we need hosts to stay back or go or whatever. I'll do whatever the team needs me to do.
Did you do all the Egypt add-ons?
Not all of them, I don't think. No.
Did you do the hot air balloon?
I did the hot air balloon, yes.
What about the 4-hour away one?
Yeah, I did that one. I wasn't going to. Why did I even do that? Because I'd already been down to Abu Simbel and
always busting in my balls. That's why.
Oh,
I think that's why he friended me on Facebook. Mo did just yesterday.
Yeah.
Timmy's there right now. I was talking to Timmy this morning, Lord Tim of Georgia. Georgia? I think so. Anyway, he was on the boat. I was like, "Are you on the cruise yet?" He's like, "I'm on the top deck of the cruise drinking whiskey right now." I was like, "Cool. I'm at work." That's 9 hours ahead there, so seems like they're having quite the time.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, it really makes me, because now that I have Tim and Mo and Yusuf all on Facebook, they're just like, and I have Tito as well, Mahmoud Tito. So I got all these pictures of them going all these places I remember, and that makes me miss it a little bit. It was quite an adventure. It was like,
Oh, yeah.
I remember when I came back, like when I got back, I was kind of just like, never again. I've never, this planes, it's just fucking, it's all too much. It's too much. And I'm like, I'll go back. I'll end up going back eventually. Not, I don't know when, but eventually I'll go back. It'll be nice to go to the Azores though, because it's just a hop, skip, and a jump, literally. I think it's like a 3-hour flight from Boston. So nothing
Yeah,
to
it's probably longer for us to get to Boston than it is to get from Boston to there.
Yeah, and it's only like 5 hours ahead or probably something like that. It's not a total train wreck on the time change. It's like the 9 hours ahead is a tough time to even like communicate with home. It's almost like home doesn't exist for a while because you're out sort of busy all day. And then when you get home at night, I guess, they're still at work usually. And then you go to bed and then you get home from work and you're asleep. I was like catching my kids, I think it was first thing in their morning, right before I went to bed, before they went to school. So anyway, contact at thecabin.com. The Azores trip is there. Click it, get your ticket, get your deposit. Let us know if you want to come. Like I say, there's only 16 spots left. As I speak these words, there's 16 spots left. If you think you want a private room, the situation gets even more dire because there's only 2 of those left. And I don't, so the private room person, get on it.
Yeah. So the other thing is, I was on Skeptical recently, so check that out. Latest episode that came out, I think. That was fun with Alex. It was pretty interesting. He had his AI assistant doing some asking questions about me and like what we would do as podcasters through our journey and stuff. And it was actually quite bang on. It was pretty interesting.
Really?
And we talked about sort of like some Trump politics stuff and how some of the stuff we've been talking about over the years is like, it's such a fascinating time because, there's a public awareness around all kinds of stuff that we talked about years and years ago. Everything from UFOs to alternative health and weather modification. And I mean, it's just such a fascinating time right now.
Well, I mean, Alex was there for the first vaccine chat. Not the first one, but like when we had him, I'd say he was the first unlikely ally in that thing. Because remember, we ended up on with him and RPJ.
Oh, right.
And it turned into a debate almost, and like Alex was piling on, and it really did just turn onto a kind of a pile on RPJ. I mean, he did kind of earn it later, but at the time it was probably a bit much. That being said, it was just like common sense stuff. So he just, and I mean, people who want to know what happened, they just go listen to that episode. Was that in the regular show or the?
It might have been in our Black Budget feed before it turned into Outlawed,
which would now be in the early Outlawed episodes then, because I think the Outlawed episodes, if you go below 0, will actually start to go into the negative.
Well, even on our website.
No,
check it out. I can check it out now, but it'll take a while to get down on the bottom. But I'll check it out.
I'm on the podcast now, so the free podcast will go to episode -17, November 17th, 2018. Interrupting essays, September 1st, revisited. -16, -15, Industrial Society and its future. Black Budget with Billy Bones and Bill Loby. Where we got Salvin Bill, intro turned black budget, nights around. I don't see that one here, you know?
Hey, there's Matt Apocalypse. Actually, I just saw him in here.
I don't
He
see.
he was number 75 in the free episodes in Outlawed. Matt Apocalypse. So check that out. We were just talking about him in Atlantis. So it must have been in the regular show then, because unless we just didn't put that one out there, but that seems odd.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was.
The website
No, you know what? RPJ was fucking nowhere around when we were doing that. He was already gone, wasn't he?
Yeah.
His Trump must have been the final split. How do you spell Takaris again?
TSAKIRIS, I think.
We gotta say something.
Yeah, I'll, just search that. Search that, dude.
Search it, dude. 308.
Our website only goes to, our website free on Outlawed only goes down to number 17 for some reason. It starts at Dr. Andrew Wakefield for some reason.
Probably because the other ones weren't relevant or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
432, we had Alex Takaris on. Why Evil Matters.
That was way back then, 432.
Yeah, June 2020.
Oh my God, that's hard to believe.
Grimerica Roundtables with Alex Takaris, Connor Habib, and Red Pill Junkie. Wasn't that one though, was it?
I don't know. I guess not.
Oh, here we go. It was Black Budget number 9, Tough Conversations with Alex Takaris and RPJ.
Yeah, what was the date?
It's the date is it's on our website here. Let's see if it works. That's crazy music, huh?
When's that come? When was that out?
Incredible pace, that like there were like he will, attend to 300 persons per day, something like that, and he will dispatch them in less than 5 minutes.
The date. Oh no, I can't shut it off now. We have the date on this show. Black Budget. I can't find a date. I don't. It's got to give a date somewhere, don't it? I don't see a date. It says bonus sneak a peek, Black Budget number 9.
Interesting.
I mean, this is just could be some weird find on the website that doesn't really exist anywhere.
Yeah, totally. It's not really in any feed. It's not really in any podcast feed. Like, if you get that episode, you got to go to the website and scroll down to the very, very first page.
I sent you the link so you can put it in the show notes.
All right.
So you can listen to that. So, the beginning of the end, so to speak. So anyway, shout out to Lord Timmy over in Egypt. Tell the boys you said hello. We do have some supporters to thank. Support the show. America.ca/support. Some people forget or think that this is a free podcast. Just because it is available for free doesn't mean that it is free. It's supposed to be a value for value podcast. So if you are getting some value from a little show here, 685 episodes all there for free. No paywalls, no anything required. You can just listen to it all today, tomorrow, or when it take you a few days. I believe there's 1,000 hours plus of content there. So if you listened all day, every day, it's still going to take you like I don't know. What's that? I mean, 40 days and 40 nights. And you could get through the entire Grimerica back catalog. So, I mean, then if you could do that, and it gives a little value to your life, maybe to commute, to your day job, wherever you're listening, head over to grimerica.ca/support today and sign up for a monthly. Make a one-time donation. It helps us. It helps you. We'll make you a noble of Grimerica. We'll read your note if you have one. The monthlies are great, especially because then we know what to expect, what to budget for, if we can budget for anything. So we do have a few people, and of course, we caveat that by saying you can become a lord or lady of Grimerica if you get to $1,000 Canadian, which is almost nothing American, and you become a god of Grimerica for 10 grand. So something to consider.
Deity of your choice.
You pick. So shout out to Lisa O'Donnell. Lisa on the east coast of Australia listening. You sent over $10 donation for the Grimerica show. Thank you, Lisa. Then we go over to David Spratt. Sends just a heart on fire emoji.
Nice.
$50 says donation for the Grimerica show. And Cody from Fargo just became a $3.33 a month patron on our Patreon page. So,
I love it. Thanks. That helps. Thank you, Cody.
You all. So, of course, let us
wonderful
know.
Nobles.
We couldn't do without you. We'd be dead without you. And they're trying to take our guns. I mean, we haven't even talked about that yet. But they
we won't talk about it on this show. Just come and visit us on Wednesday. Usually we're streaming Wednesday nights, roundups. We talk about Canadian politics and Canadian stuff. And it's pretty fun. It's very off the cuff. It's like No Agenda in a way, but sort of more Canadian, eh?
Hey. So, yeah, they just willy-nilly banned another 350 guns. Luckily, I don't have any of them. I lost my guns in a boating accident with my friend Jesse Cole. It's real shit.
There's been a record number of boating accidents recently. I mean, I can't believe. I mean, I wonder if we posted that on X, if people would get it.
People didn't get it on Facebook.
They didn't know.
Getting phone calls and shit. But I mean, it is unfortunate. If I did have any guns that were on that list, I don't know, because I forget what they were and they fell in the water. So I just have perfectly legal weapons, shotguns, centerfire, bolt action rifles, that sort of thing around here, and in limited quantity and supply. So luckily, I'm unaffected by the new legislation, but some people aren't. So my heart goes out to them. Hold fast. Don't give up your guns to anybody for any reason. Don't sell them back. Don't give them to Ukraine like these crazy assholes are saying. And listen to our show. Our roundup on Wednesday live will be out in your pod player late Wednesday night or early Thursday morning, where we could do it. We'll do a rundown of all that. I'm sure Graham's expecting.
Does that not apply to you because you're Indian as well?
No comment.
Oh, that's gray area. Okay. I've got a note from Paul in Australia, and he was sending me
Two Australians in one show.
What?
2 Australians in one show.
Yeah. He's been looking back at all the emails he's been sending us, these chains, but he's the one that was having to go to court for making stuff in the lab and all that. You remember we've been talking about it? So not in the lab, but in his place, you know. Anyways, he says on another note, I listened to the Wade Richardson interview yesterday. So he must have listened to the live version, which is, if you want to watch the show, it's also on like Rumble. Sometimes YouTube don't trust YouTube, but Rumble, Rockfin, where else?
Yeah, people always say where this episode's not on YouTube. Yeah, that's because we were suspended or striked or something. Happened.
I had learned prior to attempting to manufacture DMT that taking a MOAI, I thought that was MOAI at first, and I'm like, what? A MOAI? He's like, MOAI is the title of the email was, I thought it was MOAI. MOAIs are dangerous or something.
Something inhibitor.
It's a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. 30 minutes prior to taking the DMT orally, allows it to be processed by the liver and to last for 5 hours, as full DMT experience similar to ayahuasca. In fact, the second vine boiled up with the ayahuasca plant is the MOI inhibitor. Without these, the body cannot produce a trip. I've tried smoking DMT and found that I have aphantasia. I don't see anything but what I describe as brain flashes and pings, nothing to zoom in on. Decarbing cannabis is kind of similar in that the body can only produce a tiny high from eating raw pot. It begins to decarb in the belly but passes through at too low a temperature and too fast to fully decarb the total THC. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. See?
I wouldn't know. And then he said, I just want to read, I should underline, this is another email, but he deletes the thread, so you can never go back and read the thread. This is what the beginning of his other email was, that he was, because he heard me talk about how I couldn't find the thread. I should underline that MOIs are dangerous to take as they linger long after the final dose, and natural inhibitors take many weeks to recover and begin producing again at natural levels. For some stupid reason, these are often in antidepressants. Fucking crazy, this world. I bought some Syrian rue to make a tea with, but never got to use it and have since tossed it away. These are not for everyday folks to fuck about with unless fully researched and informed. Thanks for the warning, Paul, and the heads up and the email.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, did you have another email you said, or you couldn't find it?
No, I found it already.
That was all of them?
Yeah.
Well, there you have it, guys. Support the show, please. GoAmerica.ca/support if you can, when you can. Contact at the cabin. Of course, if you do want to check out the trips, we have another great trip with Randall Carlson. Coming up, we're going to talk about hunting. I mean, if you want to come hunt ducks with me next fall, there's a few opportunities to do that on our Eventbrite page, which isn't linked to the Contact at the Cabin page because it's a little different. But I should probably come up with a clever URL for that at some point. But just email me or Graham if it's something you're interested in. That's actually behind the scenes sort of filling up quick because I'm trying to organize a couple crews in Mohawks for next fall. So it looks like I'll do like maybe 16 from Ganawaka. I got the flag I still been needing to put up that Kyle brought me when he came out. And then Junior was just out here again like a week ago picking up some stuff. So that'll fill up pretty quick because next fall is going to be pretty busy because we'll be off to the Azores for half of November. So I don't think I'll be able to run more than 3, which is only the 18 people. And I think 12 of those are probably gone already. We're going to be gone fairly quickly. So want to check that out, get a hold of me or find it on the Eventbrite page or Graham will put a link in the show notes. You got a bio?
Yeah. Wade Richardson, an experienced psychonaut with over 15 years of experience, has written a comprehensive guide to intentionally sharing consciousness through psychedelic-assisted telepathy. In the Psychedelic MindMeld, Richardson presents techniques for entering and maintaining a telepathic mind meld, including Vipassana meditation practices and holotropic breathwork. So yeah, check it out. There's a couple links in the show notes. One is to his Facebook, which is Psychedelic MindMeld, and also Amazon.com/Psychedelic MindMeld. His book is on Amazon.com. So that's it.
There you have it, guys. Enjoy the chat. Wade Richardson.
So yeah, we are live with Wade Richardson, the author of the Psychedelic MindMeld. We're looking forward to chatting with you about your book. Welcome, Wade.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Looking forward to our conversation.
Oh yeah, this will be fascinating. We've hit psychedelics a little bit on the show. Personally, I don't partake. Darren does. I used to when I was younger, but I have not for quite a while. And but we've talked about, you know, all this kind of stuff on the show before, psychedelics and telepathy, but not really like together like this. So this will be awesome.
Yeah, cool.
So how did this become a topic of actually getting to the point where you're writing a book about it, not just playing around with it?
Well, yeah, it's a strange thing, you know, it just kind of happened out of nowhere. I'd been into psychedelics for quite some time. I'd been going to ayahuasca ceremonies, and you know, there's a certain weirdness, of course, that comes along with psychedelics. But the telepathy aspect of it, I had no idea about. Funny enough, when researching my book, I found that it's not that uncommon. It just hasn't really been written about, and hasn't been talked about all that much, but it's certainly a thing. And if we step back in time, the first experience of really dropping in was I was in an ayahuasca ceremony in Mexico. I was with a friend of mine, and we were into our third night, and not much was happening for me. I was a bit disappointed, and it was one of those kind of neat synchronicities where we were going to this place in Mexico to do some sporting stuff, and my friend had an interest in doing ayahuasca. And, you know, he was struggling with some addiction issues, and this was kind of a neat opportunity for him. And the shaman phoned me up, and she was saying, "Oh yeah, we're doing this ayahuasca ceremony in the jungle near this town." I'm like, "Wow, we're going to be there." So we're in, and so we're into the third night, and yeah, he was really struggling, which is not uncommon for people struggling with addiction issues, and yeah, I was kind of for myself disappointed with my own experience, but then I really started asking, like, why am I there? And it was certainly for my friend. And then I was just dropping into this, you know, heartfelt meditation, kind of an empathic place of sharing, I guess, with my friend, and not really expecting much to come of that. But as I got into it, within less than 5 minutes, all of a sudden this energy just like plowed through my body. And you can imagine we're in the jungle. It's quite dark, but my friend's sitting next to me, and all of a sudden my arm just spontaneously just reaches out and grabs the side of his head. And I was just going along with it, you know, as I mentioned earlier, the weirdness of doing psychedelics. And then all of a sudden I started to have this energy flow through me, and this profound grief. I started crying and kind of shaking. And I didn't know what was going on, but it went on for 20 minutes, half an hour. And then eventually it stopped. And then I was like, wow, what was that? Anyway, the next morning I was talking to my friend, asking him about his, you know, experience in that story. And he was saying that many years ago, like 20 plus years ago, he had a daughter who died when she was about 4 years old. And he was a doctor and, of course, unable to save her, which probably added to the complexity of the situation. But he said that for the first time, he released that grief and really processed the passing of his daughter. And I was like, wow, like I didn't have that story, but I certainly went through the emotional state of where he was at and letting that go. And that was the beginning. And, you know, there's so many stories that followed after that, but that's where it started.
Wow, that's great. I mean, I do remember trying to do this stuff as like when I used to use drugs and do this kind of stuff, but I never had enough reverence about it. But that was always kind of a thing. Like, can we connect the, you know, mind to mind type thing? But it just never seemed to work for me. But I know that even I've been around people on certain like psilocybin when I've been sober, and I felt connected to them, like not actually to the point where reading mine, but I felt in the same resonance. Like I felt like I've been able to just be there enough, just holding the space or whatever, and not being too judgmental to be like to resonate with it. But it's good. It's interesting to hear these stories of actual connection and synchronicity like that. Darren, have you ever had like a telepathic type thing happen?
I don't know. We tried to do some telepathic stuff on our mushroom episode, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
But I definitely maybe had some like shared hallucinations on acid and stuff.
What did
But
that
you
look like?
never know how exact it is because it's like you're like, whoa, did you see what that guy's face just did? And it's like, well, yeah.
So when you say that, Darren, these are visuals outside of yourself, like in terms of hallucinating something outside of your experience, like in the regular world, so to speak.
Well, the time I'm talking about in particular, we were just, I think, I can't remember what we were watching. It might have been like Mad TV or something way back in the day. And we were just there's like 5 or 6 or 7 of us on acid. And you can see, like, you know how the faces melt when you're on acid, but it was just like one scene in particular where it flashed from one dude to another dude, and everyone was just kind of at the same time. Everyone was just like, whoa. You see what that guy's face just did? And it's like, his face probably clearly didn't actually do anything on the show, but it was like every single person in the room sort of said whoa at the same time.
Right. Yeah, there could be something there.
So is there anybody doing, like, was there any scientific studies about this stuff at all, or anybody doing actual research on this? Because I know that they're trying to do like lucid dreaming research and OBE stuff and all that, but I don't know about actually telepathy.
Yeah, there was a little bit of stuff, like Krippner back in the 60s was playing around a little bit, and there was definitely some shared experience there. What was more interesting is that when he got into the therapeutic use of psychedelics like LSD, and this work was, of course, being done in the 50s and early 60s, there wasn't an attempt to make a telepathic link. But what therapists were finding is that when the subject was on psychedelics and, they're kind of in that therapeutic setting, is that sometimes the client or the research person was actually experiencing the inner world of the therapist, and they would speak to the inner reality of the therapist, so it's kind of like therapy in reverse, so to speak. But that shows up in the literature, which of course is very fascinating. And there have been some attempts to look at cards, like playing cards and share an image of, say, the 5 of Hearts, working with lower doses of psychedelics and even kind of mid-level doses. But nothing, really solid on that end.
Has that shown any difference at all, the cards? Like trying to precog cards?
Yeah, I mean, there's some indication, but the results are mixed. There hasn't been that many tests. And of course, we've been in kind of a fallow period for decades where there just hasn't been much work. And there's another author, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's actually been playing around with it just in the last 5 years and published a book just recently on the subject of working with it kind of with the playing cards and kind of more standard telepathic study.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see if it really, because do you remember those studies that came out a while back? Probably, I guess it's probably almost 10 years ago now, where they showed the brain activity was the opposite of what everybody thought on psilocybin. So it'd be interesting to see if there's some sort of ability increase with this. Because have you had other experiences yourself since that first one?
Oh, lots, yeah, and they're quite varied, and I think that's what the richness of the book is just how diverse the telepathic experience can be. It can be very felt at an energetic, like a physical energetic level in terms of reaching into other people's emotions, but it can also be journeying into other realms or dimensions together with another person and experiencing that together. And just to I'll give you an example of each of those. I was working with a woman, and we'd, done a few sessions together, and she was, quite a natural at doing this work. And at one point we're dropping in, it was fairly early in the session, like maybe half an hour in. And all of a sudden I just started reaching into her experience, and I could reach into and feel and intuit this thing of, some resentment towards her husband. There were some challenges around the death of her sister, and some levels or layers of self-hatred. And what was most fascinating about that, so that's coming through for me, but at the same time, she is understanding and kind of intuiting that I'm actually reading all of that. And then there's this kind of stepping back and kind of an embarrassment. And of course, all of this is happening without us saying a word to each other, literally. So it's all telepathic sharing. And then for me, it was just creating the comfort and understanding that, hey, we're all human. We all play into this, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. This is just stuff to be processed. And that's what we continue to do. And we started dropping further into physical engagement of massage and release, catharsis, etc. And she worked past it, and we ended up moving more towards like working in heavenly realms or being in heavenly realms together. So, and that's kind of the jump into the, shared psychic state. And my wife have done this a number of times. And you can, end up in archetypal places or other things like that. And one quick example is my wife and I did mushrooms. And again, just to be really clear, there's no intent of going to a particular place. It's just simply more a telepathic intent of sharing. And that's it. And you just drop in. Letting go of the ego and kind of letting the higher self or soul or spirit, whatever words you want to play with, take over. And the next thing, we're journeying to this archetypal realm that is just filled with like golden palaces. And we were there as like king and queen. And there were no subjects. It's not like we were, in some kind of dominator complex or something like that, but it's more simply just experiencing ourselves as the archetype of the fully embodied masculine and feminine.
Wow.
Yeah, that's wild. People might not know that we actually had Stanley Krippner on the show like 11 years ago as I think like our third guest or something like that.
That's awesome.
I wonder if some of Rick Strassman's work would cross over into this. Because I remember the last time we talked to him, they were like hooking people up to DMT intravenously and trying to hold them in that like hyper hallucinogenic state for an extended period of time.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned like NN-DMT. I certainly wonder about that. I haven't done that with another person, but of course NN-DMT is the active ingredient in ayahuasca. But to smoke it, I question how feasible it is because, of course, you're just shot out of the cannon so instantly into this other place where, funny enough, you are actually experiencing telepathic connection, but those telepathic connections are with, alien beings or these other discarnate beings, whatever you want to call them. I think it may be difficult to land at the same place with another human being, so to speak.
I've seen guys smoke that DMT and like an hour later they physically look like a different person because, like wrinkles have dissipated in their face or whatever. I don't know what's happened, but to the point where I've like gone back to work because it'll be like a semi-colleague and I'll go back to site like the next week after having a DMT experience with the guy on the weekend. And buddy's like, what did you do to John, man? Because that dude looks different. He's like, something's changed in him. And it's just like, I don't know. I bet you John don't even know. It's just a weird thing that just sort of happens or self-adjusts while you're in there. There seems to be something going on when nothing seems to be going on.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because you mentioned DMT, and certainly working with 5-MeO DMT, which I have done, you can definitely share psychedelic space with that. And I think Martin Ball, he's out of Oregon. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's probably the best person to connect to in terms of someone who's done a lot of writing on the subject of working with 5-MeO DMT with two people. And the connections are infinite. They tend to be very physical and clearing of blockages in the body. I mention it briefly in the book, but I definitely refer people to Martin's work because he's written so extensively on the subject. And it tends to drop much more into a non-dual place where I'm exploring much more the dual experience of subject and object, where there's, generally speaking, a me and another person, and we're working together. And that's not to say that you can't jointly fall into non-dual places, but that's not the primary destination. It's just something that can happen along the way.
Darren, weren't you mentioning that it was intravenous though? The DMT that you're talking about? Is that what he was?
My DMT.
No, the one that Strassman was.
Strassman, I think, was doing intravenous DMT when he was trying to do. We're having him on, I think, in like a week or two. So I'm interested.
Yeah, and that's the NNDMT, just for clarity.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a different thing. But at that time, I think that's what the last time. Now he's like really. At that time, I'm curious to see where he's at this time. But at that time, he was really sort of. I mean, as tends to happen, but getting really into that spirit, more and more into the spiritual, it seemed like, and still in the science, obviously, but it seems like the people that get into this work inevitably start, because I think the last one was, what was the last one called? The last book, but it was almost starting to have more and more religious connotations.
Yeah, he did a book that looked at the Hebrew scripture and was kind of making a comparison between the Israelites and their visionary experiences and those of the people he was working with intravenously taking NNDMT.
Oh, I see. Okay, right. I remember that now.
Yeah, there's some pretty neat comparisons. I think he was a little unfair to the people taking DMT, though, because, of course, he was looking at it from a cultural perspective in terms of, how the Israelites create this, really solid religion, and there's a lot of substance there. Whereas, of course, people just taking DMT in a lab or more generally in our society where it's still illegal, it's not like everybody's getting together and kind of thinking about, well, how do we best integrate this? And what do all these experiences mean? And how should that drive us as a collective or community?
Yeah.
That may come, but not yet.
Yeah. Do you find any, or Darren, do you have any more questions?
Well, I would just add to that, who knows how long it took? We don't have a society where we can really evolve these psychedelic practices. We don't know how long those Israelites might have had to play around before they got to that.
Well, yeah, I completely agree. I mean, theoretically, they were at it for thousands of years, right? And we're just kind of starting.
Without a taboo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we haven't even legalized the stuff yet.
Yeah. So you could see how it could get to that same point. It just, you can't not in this current environment.
Was that the same is that the same language that Randall talks about, where there represents all the characters represent numbers and sounds as well?
What?
The Hebrew, is that the Hebrew? The Hebrew language? The one that Randall talks about, where every one is like a sound and it has a number associated with it, and and the letter.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You lost me. Randall would know.
Well, okay. Did the Israelites use the Hebrew language, I guess, is the main question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be the same one. I mean, that's fascinating about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are some, like, is there some differences between, like, do you have any favorites? Like, what if people want to make this connection together, let's say like just a couple want to make a telepathic connection, what would you recommend? Or is
the first big thing of
different way, different abilities through different types of psychedelics?
Yeah, well, I think most psychedelics will likely take people there if they're focused on the technique. And I think one of the biggest things, well, there's a couple of really big things. And one is finding the right person, right? So you really have to find someone you can trust, because you're basically making yourself completely naked at the emotional level, at every level. Your complete biography can surface. And so you have to be prepared for that. The other person has to be prepared for that. And that, of course, demands a high level of trust. There can also be a lot of physical engagement where the body starts spontaneously moving blockages in the body. So there has to be a lot of comfort in terms of physical touch. And, I talk about a lot of this in detail in the book, but these are really critical parts, and I talk a lot about sexuality because we're seeing in the psychedelic world, Unfortunately, sexual abuse unfortunately shows up all over the place, but we're seeing it more and more in the psychedelic world. And for that reason, I talk quite a lot about sexuality, because inevitably sexual energy arises, and it might be fleeting, as in seconds, but it may also be around for a few minutes. And I talk about that in terms of the need to observe it and let it pass and not act on it. And when engaging this way, just basically agreeing up front that there won't be any sexual engagement. The primary purpose is to connect at a very deep telepathic level, and not to go beyond that. If people want to work with psychedelics sexually, then that's another thing, and that can be awesome too. But separating the two out. So that's kind of a starting point. And then in terms of techniques, it basically is lying on a bed together, which obviously and automatically is very intimate, lying side by side, clothed, of course, but holding hands. And then really, working with the power of thought form and intent, that there's going to be a telepathic connection. And, there's various techniques that people can use. But a really good one is just how I jumped into it at the beginning. Like I mentioned, that hard opening meditation when I was in Mexico with my friend, and that's certainly a common way to enter these states. And then you can also get a little bit more detailed and focusing on the heart, focusing on it expanding, and that can be expanding down your arm, feeling into the other person's hand, and then up through their hand into their heart. And it sounds kind of simple, and maybe a bit foreign, but when you're in the psychedelic space, it is very profound, and it is very meaningful and does work. And that's not to say it will work for everybody, because the key to this is that both people need to relax their ego, and certainly the typical surrender that's often described when working with psychedelics, because it's something beyond the ego that is actually engaging in that telepathic space.
Is there anything people should be doing prior to taking the psychedelics?
Well, a really big thing is meditation. So a critical thing is just being able to sit completely still. You want to basically drop into kind of the hypnagogic state where the body is kind of falling asleep, but the mind is awake. And you don't want to move the body unless it's spontaneously moving itself. And a critical thing there is that as soon as, I have an itch and I go to itch it, it's basically taking away from the inner process and inner experience of sharing. So, someone has to be capable of lying completely still, ideally for an hour. This is where, like Vipassana styled meditation of that complete stillness and being comfortable with being in that space, especially as, maybe shadow content start to come up, and not rolling over, because that's an obvious example of like, oh, I feel uncomfortable, I'm going to just roll over, and that's a distraction. So again, the meditation practice up front really helps with the psychedelic mind meld.
What about breath work?
Yeah, breath work is really good too. Obviously, it's a type of form of meditation, and it can be very centering. So in terms of dropping in at the beginning, focusing on the breath, and just, becoming really comfortable within the body. Again, not moving, but just focusing on the breath is a really good way to start. And then later on, let's say you've been working with the mind meld for some time and the psychedelic is now starting to wear off. A good way of jumping back into the experience is to work with holotropic breath work, which of course Stanislav Grof and his wife developed, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago or something. And that's just to basically accelerate the breath very purposefully. And it's kind of like a yogic form of breathing, Kabbalah. And yeah, just work with that for half an hour, or maybe longer. And when you're working with it with the psychedelics, it accelerates everything. Because normally when doing holotropic breathwork sessions, they tend to be 3 to 4 hours of just breathing without psychedelics.
What about dose?
Sorry, which?
Dose?
Oh, dose, yeah. So we're definitely working with high dose. this is the thing, of course, in terms of engaging with this, is that when working with someone else, people should have some experience working with psychedelics and be familiar with those, because we're working with high dose, not low or moderate doses. We're working with high dose. So, the challenge with kind of being overly prescriptive is that, if we're talking about mushrooms, some mushrooms are stronger than others. And, that's kind of complicated. And then, of course, do we actually know how much psilocybin is in any given mushroom or measurement weight? But, typically we'll just as a ballpark figure, the 5 gram range, we'll say, plus or minus.
The heroic dose range. Yeah.
Yeah. Or just below the heroic dose, because I've done some heroic work myself, and sometimes you can feel like you're tied behind a horse and being dragged across the countryside, and you're just completely lost.
What about, is it ever more than 2 people, like a big MindMeld group?
Well, yeah, certainly that's a possibility, but I think, for myself, I've avoided that because of the complexity. And, I actually stopped going to ayahuasca ceremonies because I was starting to drop into too many people's experiences, and it started becoming confusing. And it was just too much chaos in the experience. So my preference is to work one-on-one, because when you introduce another person, like when you have 3 people there, now you're exponentially growing the complexity, because it's not just me and, my primary person I'm working with. It's me and the 2 people. And then I also have to navigate the relationship that those other 2 people are sharing between themselves. So you can imagine, okay, that's 3. Now you add 4, 5, 6, and exponentially, there's just so many different relationships playing out at one time. It just becomes so complex that I think it's easy to get lost. And things I think it just becomes easier for things to go sideways.
That totally makes sense. Yeah, I can see that.
Now, having said that, let me just also say, and this is not, for me, the psychedelic mind meld work, but maybe, Darren, what you were kind of leading to is that, there are these descriptions of people going to like big raves or concerts. I mean, the Grateful Dead concert being kind of the most talked about experience, and people having these shared large experiences together, kind of group mind. And so I think that's certainly possible, and can be, lead into certain forms of ecstasy and be great. But this work is a lot more specific than that, and can drop really into, therapeutic work and processing different things, reaching into non-dual states together, but again, within, kind of a more confined setting.
Go ahead, Darren.
Is this something, what is this sort of practice best for? I mean, it sounds like it's pretty tailored for, I would say, romantic couples, but what other aspects is it sort of applicable to?
Well, certainly there's this therapeutic side, right? So, I've worked with people, and, shadow contents come up. So those are being processed, and that might be their contents, but it also might be mine. There's also a physical aspect, which I've been kind of describing. And just to give you a bit of a sense of this, I was working with a friend of mine, and, at one point I'm basically have, one hand working on one side of his chest through his ribs, and then the other hand coming through the other side and kind of creating a direct point between the two. And I penetrated right into his lungs, and I could see inside his lungs. And he was someone who had smoked a lot, both tobacco and pot, over many years. And his lungs were just very polluted. And then I ended up, coughing and almost throwing up, but just lots of phlegm, and like tasting the pot and like these residues in his lungs. And so that's like processing and cleaning at that level. This is, kind of a bit more of an extreme example, but I mean, you can drop right in, and there's healing aspects that can arise that are beyond, just the mind. Like that spirit is coming through, the divine is coming through, and there's healing that can happen both at the physical level and at the psychological level. So there are these different layers, and of course, there's the whole thing of dropping into non-dual states. So having and sharing very profound spiritual experiences together. So it's a whole range of things, and for me, in that context, I really see it as something for more advanced psychonauts.
Yeah, totally. You mentioned your first experiences when your arm spontaneously went to his head. Have you played around with like touching people's heads at all, or like that connection directly to your heads? And also, what about eye contact?
Yeah, so I just work with the body spontaneously doing what it does, and I have quite often had my arm all of a sudden on another person's head, and sometimes it looks like something right out of a Star Trek MindMeld, which is part of the reference there. It really does have that Vulcan look to it. It's pretty strange, but it's a thing. And it's pretty rare though that there's eye-to-eye contact. It does happen once in a while, but more often than not, the journey is, so profound. I mean, you're moving around a lot if you're engaged in the physical stuff, and if you're, moving through other dimensions and stuff, you're of course lying still, and it's an inner journey. So yeah.
I'd like to know more about setting, that being such an important thing that we've talked about for so much. But is there, do you use anything to relaxation, like candles or incense or anything like that, or lighting? What are some other things that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I talk about that, and I think that is a lot of that comes down to individual preference. But there are some basic things. Certainly having a secure place. Where you have a house that is locked, where people aren't just going to be randomly coming in.
You're not worried about someone piling in right in the middle.
yeah, right. Especially if they have no idea what's going on. And then of course, something that is fairly soundproof, because I was describing this experience of dropping into this friend of mine his lungs, and I was screaming at various points, and there was actually another layer of trauma that came through where he was in a victim of a police incident many years ago in England in a stadium. And he was releasing that, and so that was very loud. And so screaming and toning and different sounds can be coming through that you definitely want to be in a place where you're not going to be alerting anybody. These are setting things, and then, candles are fine, but generally you want to be working in a fairly dark environment where you're not distracted by too much light, but enough ambient light that you can get up and go to the washroom without, crashing into something, those types of things. But, going back to set, I think that's a very critical one. There's some basic things that we all have to be aware of. And, psychedelics aren't for everyone, those predisposed to severe mental health issues, such as falling into psychosis or schizophrenia. Those are not people that should be engaging at this level. And of course, you want someone that's going to be relatively grounded. And going back to the trust thing, if things end up going a little bit sideways, you want to have someone that, you can work that out and discuss what happened, if there are any boundaries crossed, what those were, and working through that, making sure that it won't happen again. And that is a mature conversation, and so there are those aspects too.
Darren, you got any questions?
What about concerns? Do you have is there anything to watch out for? Is there any, you talked about, you sort of touched on the sexual abuse aspect and the sort of creeping into different industries. It's funny, that's always sort of hovering around some of the new age stuff. There's always just some creeps weaseling their way in. What about, is there anything like, because what you're giving someone probably a lot of power over your subconscious in these, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything you should be concerned about going into this with someone, like not maybe knowing them well enough or anything like that? Is there anything, if you do find yourself in that situation, you can do to sort of backpedal out of it without, because man, I can't imagine the amount of vulnerability it would take to do with anyone other than my wife.
Yeah, right. And so that again comes back to the key around trust. So you definitely want to have a sense of who you're working with. They're, down in South America, for example, working with ayahuasca and other psychedelics like those. I mean, there's the brujos, right? Like the dark arts. And of course, you don't have to work with psychedelics to get into doing some really nasty things to people. So you don't want to have someone that's going to be trying to play games or manipulate your subconscious or manipulate you in any way while you're in that space, right? So trust is a major piece when engaging, and something again to be on the lookout for. So again, if you're going to be burying yourself and all of yourself potentially to the other person, you want to make sure that they can work with that, and of course that you can work with that. I mean, this is a two-way thing, right? It's co-creation, and so the engagement, you're all in, and so who are you going to be all in with, and being very clear on making sure that you're with a responsible person and a mature person. Again, someone who you feel safe with. And then, of course, like you're mentioning, Darren, if you want to back out, having phones available. Now, of course, phones would be turned off, but, have an emergency person that you can contact and phone them up and say, hey, like, I need you to come over here right now and get me out of this situation. And, that other person needs to have some sense of what the psychedelic space is and know that what's happening in terms of, the plan for the day, and that they are on call, basically, right? So that's definitely a thing.
What would you give it? What kind of advice would you give to someone who's new to psychedelics, who's listening to this and thinking, I want to try this out with my wife? And is this something that you should like have a couple of trips on your own, or without trying to integrate this for a bit, or what sort of? It's more like you mentioned, it's more of an advanced psychonaut experience, so probably not for a first or second time sort of thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right. So, you want both people to have some experience with psychedelics, because let's face it, higher dose psychedelics, you get into some really strange places. So you want to have some familiar with how strange that is without, someone else stepping in and making it that much more strange. And you're like, I don't know if that's them, that's me. I don't know what's going on. And then freaking out because they have no experience and no grounding in how strange psychedelics are. So, definitely having some experience prior to doing the work. And then I think, having a solid read of the book, the Psychedelic MindMeld, there's a lot of depth and detail in there, and both people should read it, compare notes, and hey, are we ready for this? Do we really want to drop into this? And being aware of the challenges and, how to work through those, for example, if someone all of a sudden ends up in psychosis, and someone doesn't have to be predisposed to a psychotic state to drop into temporary psychosis when working with high dose psychedelics. Okay, well, that's happening now, right? So all of a sudden, the other person has to deal with it, and I talk about that in detail in the book. But it's like, what safe steps do I take to make sure that this is going to work out, that we both stay safe? And at what point does something cross the line where, if I know I don't even feel comfortable phoning another friend, like I think I need to phone an ambulance, because things, there's now a concern around physical safety, or, someone potentially doing something causing personal physical harm.
Do you worry at all about how this is becoming sort of legalized, and how the government's getting involved with, maybe in a therapeutic environment? Are you worried that this is going to go down into just to get a sort of switch gears a little bit on the topic in general? I never really thought about this till we had somebody on that was kind of they're doing their own psychedelic work, and I always thought it was a good thing that this is becoming sort of legalized. And but is there a risk that it's going to become like strictly having to be used in this like clinical setting where you can't do this stuff on your own?
Well, I think that's probably the first place it will go. And I think that's probably a healthy place for it to go, in terms of taking a very mature approach to what legalization can look like.
Right.
Because, of course, if we jump back to the 1960s, it turned into a gong show, and there was a lot of potential to harm. And, just a simple example of that is, someone dropping a couple hits of LSD and driving a car. That's extremely dangerous. And we don't want people doing that, So,
what about riding a mountain bike through downtown traffic? Not good.
Yeah, I think that's highly dangerous too.
Yeah. That was Vancouver, like 1989, I think. Not good.
Yeah. It's, you're in an altered state, it's one of those things where, a lot of people don't understand this, but even having one drink, a standard drink of alcohol, you're doubling your risk of accident. Never mind, getting up to 0.08, right?
Yeah.
And it's certainly the case with psychedelics, where there's all sorts of potential harms that can come from, not working in the correct set and setting. So if you look at it through the lens of, setting it up for therapeutics, I think that's a very slow way to go and a good way to go. Keeping in mind that, it's easy to get psychedelics on the black market anyway. So,
yeah, exactly.
That's not going to change. So, I think it's the slow move towards legalization is good. And then trying to be careful too, where, I think with alcohol and marijuana or cannabis, we're jumping really quickly into kind of like this, kind of an open marketplace. And I think that can be dangerous too, where all of a sudden, industry is marketing it, and it's just like the best thing since sliced bread, and it's for everybody when it's not. And hey, we have all these fancy names and labels because we want you to buy our stuff and make us money. And that's a kind of a scary place to be too.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, exactly. I mean, look what's happened with alcohol. Yeah, it's just not. Yeah, it's still not getting any better. That we're kind of losing the battle of addiction too. But I mean, I do think this will help in general, and I can see how this type of personal experience that you're talking about would really help. Because if I go into this mind meld with somebody, I mean, they might see a lot of stuff that I'm not seeing, or I might see a lot of stuff that they're not seeing. Like I could see it being a very beneficial thing to both parties.
Yeah, right. And there's a lot of substance there that people can work through. And let's face it, the therapeutic work with psychedelics is going to be expansive. And this is offering something where, people can, work very slowly and work with, say, their wife or their best friends, and, basically become peer support for each other, working through difficult psychological issues. And, you don't need any money for that. So I think that creates all sorts of opportunity. And another thing I think that's important to recognize too is that psychedelics, when compared to other drugs, is far safer, way safer than alcohol. There's been a lot of studies on alcohol, for example, where it's been declared by, various organizations to be the most, or, the worst drug on the planet in terms of overall damage when you think of overall consumption, in terms of, over 200 diseases associated with it that can lead to death, all the accidental deaths, the drinking and driving and all those accidents, all of the domestic violence. It's a long list of horrific things, and even challenges for low to moderate drinkers that we aren't really doing a good job of talking about. And then, if you compare psychedelics to that, they're far more safer, and they actually have some therapeutic value, which I don't think we can say of alcohol.
Right. And even hard drug, comparing it to hard drugs. I mean, I do think it's worth separating it out a little bit and saying that, like, this batch, I mean, I remember we had a guest on that was really articulated this whole thing that, like, these drugs are, you could say they're good drugs and these drugs are bad drugs. I mean, they're not as addictive as, coke and heroin and all these hard drugs either.
Yeah, exactly. But I would actually say that the classic psychedelics are not addictive, right?
No,
I mean, there's some on the borderline, MDMA and ketamine, which, are therapeutic and can be used that way, but they also have some degree of risk, even though that risk is much less than the hard drugs you mentioned or alcohol.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you give us sort of a rundown of those psychedelics? Like which ones you would consider the main
Yeah.
ones these
Classics.
days?
Yeah, or the best
and
one.
then because psilocybin would still seem to be the only one that's 100% natural. Is that true?
No, I mean there's like peyote, like so mescaline.
Oh yeah,
that,
right. Yeah,
that can certainly be used. Ayahuasca is all plant based. And a lot of people forget that LSD is actually or has its origin in a plant fungus. Even though it's highly processed, it does have its origin in plant. And 5-MeO DMT, of course, has its origin in a toad. But yeah, frankly, I use the synthesized version just because I don't like the idea of putting the extra pressure on the toads, and the results seem to be the same. So,
Right.
What about like the ones like ketamine and stuff like that? Like, do you stay away from the more lab synthesized ones, or like I don't even know what the new ones are these days? It seems like I heard some words I didn't even know last time we had someone on talking about some of the new psychedelics.
there's so much out there now, and it's a real combination. The vast majority are still plant-based, and I can't remember all the names of them, but there's over 200 plant-based psychedelics out there. And then there's, of course, a longer and longer list of these synthesized psychedelics that are showing up out of labs. And I think they have a lot of potential. I certainly, looking at it through more of the classic psychedelic lens, I think there are synthesized psychedelics out there that are not addictive. But things like ketamine, again, there's the other drugs that are kind of on the borderline of being psychedelic that have some psychedelic properties, but are not outright psychedelics. And of course, those are, the ketamine, MDMA, and others like them. But I also want to throw out there too that there's been a lot of work with cannabis, and there's been stories. There's some stuff in the research where cannabis has telepathic qualities. I haven't experienced that yet myself, but I haven't worked a lot with it. But I think there's a lot of potential there too. But again, that's dropping in and meditating very seriously together, when cannabis tends to be a very recreational drug of just kind of hanging out and having fun.
Yeah, that's a great point. I meant to ask you about that, but I was always picturing like the extracts and all that, not just like straight up cannabis, but some of the more
edibles, maybe.
Yeah.
The edibles fucking hammer you. That's like a completely different experience. People that smoke all day, eat a cookie, and they're fucking wigging out. I mean,
It's true.
We had Lord Timmy in the back.
Such a tolerance, you could eat like 300 milligrams or whatever and be fine.
And it's a
funny though,
private experience. We had a dude in the back at the last event. We had Lord Timmy was rolling in the back of my truck, and he like had one too many gummies in the morning, and it's just like, he's just quiet for a while back there, and then like 2 hours later, he's just like, whoa, man.
But it's funny, like my wife and I, we a handful of times a year we'll take 2 to 3 milligrams of THC, which by most standards is a very small amount, and we'll meditate on that together, side by side. We haven't had like profound telepathic connections, but it's a beautiful space to be in with a very small amount.
What about which one of these, or do you have any sort of habit forming problems with any of these? I mean, I do know at least one person that seems to like eating mushrooms a little bit too much. But so like,
and what would you say is too much? I'm curious.
Looking forward to it every weekend. I mean,
that
would be me. I'm just saying.
At the time, it was definitely several times a week.
Wow.
Yeah, like probably 3 nights a week. Yeah, it was. I mean, like Grant said, first it was every weekend, and then it was every weekend plus some. But it was always like, which I think is part of the problem with psychedelics, is that it's very easy to wrap in this sort of spiritual or therapeutic allure, and I guess if I was going to turn that into a question, I might ask, do you have any sort of fear of that, of this sort of, or have you come across that? Because I don't see a lot. Most people aren't interested in doing most of these things very, to often enough that it can become a problem. But I have seen it once or twice along the way where it's just that thing that someone can't get enough of.
I'm in recovery, and I know one guy only that was like, he was addicted to acid. He was just using acid multiple times per week. Like, that was his thing, he was just, that was his problem. Pretty rare.
Well, I'm curious though, like, so this is a subject I've looked into a lot. And there's, this physiological addiction. My impression has always been that people aren't physiologically addicted to it. It's one of those things where they can step back, but it's more being addicted to the experience of it.
Yeah, totally.
And then I found with people, and again, it's very few people that I've encountered this way, similar to yourselves, but there has been a couple people that I've come across who, they took a deep dive and they were doing it regularly and maybe, for 1 or 2 years, and then it just ended, and maybe they'd go back once in a while, but it was just kind of like they really wanted to dive deep into consciousness. It became obsessive, arguably addictive from that experiential point of view. And there was kind of this repeated dropping in. And, like Terence McKenna, I guess, is probably one of the most famous people who just, him with his brother Dennis, and they were like, bang, 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 doing mushrooms day after day after day in the jungle. And then, of course, Dennis ended up in psychosis for a short period of time. I think it was Dennis. It might have been Terence. But
Dennis,
over time, they ended up, taking a very mature view to their use, it seemed. And from the people I've met over the years, it seems to go that way, where it might be kind of a short but very intense relationship. And I know one guy, for example, it was in what state was it? It's one of the central states. Anyway, I met him, and he had been smoking NN-DMT for a couple of years and doing it regularly, and was introducing all his friends to it. And I hadn't done it, and I was kind of excited, but he's, oh man, I don't have any. I was a little disappointed, but he said that, just in the previous few months, he had stopped doing it. And the reason for that was that there was this, alien entity that he met, and the alien said to him, you got to stop, man. Like you got to, just take a break and integrate this stuff into your life. You've learned so much over the past couple of years, but you're done now. You can come back maybe down the road, but just take a break. And so that's what he was doing. So there are these interesting things that come up.
I had a similar experience on my second DMT experience. That was like, I can't even remember, the DMT experiences are so fast and intense that it's hard to even know or like verbalize what is happening. But there was like just a brief encounter with something. It was like no words were actually said, but the connotation was that, because I had done it, I hadn't done it, and then I did it like one weekend, and then it was again like 2 or 3 weekends after that. And I definitely got the message from some seeming entity, whether it was from within me or not, that it was time, that it was, what do you do? It was kind of like, what are you doing back here already, man?
Yeah, right. So, I mean, that's a telepathic exchange right there, and a message coming through, right? So it's great.
Yeah, and I did also have some weird, the first time I ever did it, I had some weird stuff with my kids. I remember I was like, as I was coming out of it, I kept asking my buddy about my kids, and he's like, your kids are fine, they're blah, 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 blah. And I come to find out like a week or two later that actual night that I was doing the DMT, they were just staying at a place that they didn't feel super comfortable.
Interesting. Yeah.
They had ended up, staying someplace after a party with their mom or something like that. And but I remember like them talking about it like a couple weeks later, and we just like, you're still sort of got that residual, it lasts for a few. The experience seems to stay, especially with DMT, with me at least. The experience was very like, it was right there it felt like you could still reach out and touch it. You couldn't really remember exactly what happened, but there's some part of it that you felt like you could still, it was still there for a few weeks after sort of integrating. And I just remember finding that out like a week and a half or 2 weeks later and being like, wow, what a weird sort of probably too much to be a coincidence. It's like that sort of thing. That would be maybe remote viewing or telepathic.
Yeah, well, I would say those go together. Remote viewing and telepathy are kind of an overlapping and shared phenomenon.
Is there anything before we start to wrap up? Is there anything about the book or the research, or man, I had what else did I have there, or about like misconceptions about psychedelics that we might have missed?
I think we've hit on the kind of the really important stuff. I mean, there's so much in the book that we could kind of drop into, and we've hit definitely some of the big highlights, but there's a lot of substance there, right? In terms of what this is all about, looking at all the different ways that psychedelics can be used, navigating some of the challenges, and I mean, there can be some pretty strange challenges, right? Like psychological projection, for example. So there's something going on in me, and I have a certain anger in me, and then all of a sudden, my partner starts to embody that anger, and they become, they start to look scary, and they might have a demonic look about them or something like that. And yet that's just my own anger being projected onto the other person. So, I drop in and talk a lot about these subtleties in terms of what can arise. And one of the key things, going back to meditative techniques, is taking the what I describe as the bodhisattva view, or a non-dual view, which when you're sitting in this place with another person, that everything that's arising in the experience is you, because the ultimate reality as I see it is it's non-dual. Everything is connected. Everything is me. God flows, or the divine flows through everything. And so if whatever I'm experiencing that is the other person, I take the view that that is my experience and that is me. And it's a very empowering view to take, and it doesn't result in finger pointing. So if I'm going through something that's uncomfortable, I don't blame the other person for it. It's like, hey, I signed up for this, and there certainly have been a lot of times where I've gone through very uncomfortable things, in terms of processing other people's stuff. And there's been some of that, going the other way too, of course, in this co-creative process, and just, dropping in and being okay with all of it, because it's all of the divine just kind of playing out.
I like that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, well said, Wade Richardson. This has been great. Where can people get the book? Where's the best place to get the book? Do you have any websites? I think you said before you didn't have a website. Actually, I think you told us that before we started recording. Do you have any social media or anything like that?
Yeah, so I can be found on Facebook. There's also a group page, Psychedelic MindMeld, also on Facebook. The book is on Amazon, and there's a few other sellers, of course. It's a Simon & Schuster is the distributor. And of course, it's Inner Traditions or Park Street Press, which is the publisher. So it's pretty easy to find.
How long has it been in the making?
Well, in terms of the writing and publishing of the book, it's over a couple of years, but you could argue that, it dates back over 15 years when I started psychedelics and started, trying to figure out what all these weird and strange experiences were and what they meant, because that's how far back the reading and research went, without any intent about writing a book,
Oh, I think it's really important to highlight this aspect of it. I mean, I really do, because it's a point that people can actually like confirm and corroborate that they're having these experiences, and that's just going to help open up the whole thing for people to understand that we're not just sort of this physical thing, that we can connect in these ways. I really feel like it's important.
Yeah, thanks. And that's certainly one of the points of the book, is to validate that which is already happening out there. I mean, you guys are describing some of your telepath experiences, and I think if we dove even deeper, we'd probably find even more, like just simple stuff of, picking up the phone to phone a friend, and they're like, oh yeah, I was thinking of you too, like just simple stuff like that. That's all a play of telepathy.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's really about validating what's out there and encouraging people to go much deeper and sharing the porosity that we are and the oneness that we are.
Oh, I love it. Awesome.
It comes out what, Monday, Tuesday?
The 10th, December 10th.
December 10th. Well,
the big
Wade,
release.
Wade, this has been great. We appreciate you coming on the show. and answering some questions for us. This has been great. They sent me the book, so I have it upstairs. I meant to bring it down so I could show it to the camera, but
yeah, this will probably come out of the 9th, I think. So a good
it'll
timing.
almost come out right on release day. Yeah, it'll be the release eve.
Yeah, well, Darren Graham, I really appreciate you inviting me to the show. It's been a fun conversation for me, and it's a great way to connect. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Wade.
All right, Wade. Have a great night.
Okay, you too. Take care.
And that was a chat with Wade Richardson, the psychedelic mind meld. What do you think? I didn't.
Yeah,
that thing.
That was fun. Yeah, I like it. I can
do it. Even after I messed up my fingers, I could still do that.
Yeah, it kind of makes me want your fingers are in a permanent like Star Trek thing now.
This one's mangled.
Like Mork from Mork. So I mean, yeah, it kind of makes me want to try this.
Oh boy,
try the mind meld.
Next thing you know, you'll be looking like Nicky the Dude, dancing around cack in your robe.
It was fun. I mean, I was trying to get. Did he recommend a certain type over a certain type of psychedelic? Was it, or just mushrooms, DMT, whatever?
I would say, if I was to hazard a guess, I would say that the shrooms are the best one.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. Okay, cool.
But I'm not telling you to do shrooms. I mean, that's.
Oh, I know.
I tell you, I can't tell you that as your partner here. And
no, I'm not. Yeah, I get it.
You got your 15-year chip.
16 and a half. It's 60. It's coming up on 17.
You get a chip at 16?
Yeah. Well, no.
I feel like you get a chip at 15 and then you get another one at 20.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. Yeah.
So, all right. Big thanks to Wade for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Big thanks to our lords and our ladies and our nobles out there that support the show. Keep us going. 680 some episodes in the bank, all for free, all there. No paywall, no back catalog fees. Just if you like it, send us some cash. Grimerica.ca/support if you can, when you can. So you can send us a monthly donation, or you can just send a one-time donation of whatever you want. $1, $2, $10. It's up to you. Check out adultbrain.ca for over 100 audiobooks. Contact@thecabin.com for a few trips. Our Azores trip, when this comes out, will officially be on sale to the general public. Searching for Atlantis with Randall Carlson. Contact@thecabin.com. Check out YouTube. We just had our mini documentary come out, so check that out. It's called Thanks for Listening, a Grimerica story. Big thanks to T. Snyder for producing that for us. And what am I friend? GrimericaOutlaw.ca for our other podcasts. So other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Started writing down a list of things to do. Number 1 on the list of things to do was to write a list of things to do. Number 2 on the list, a little more nihilist, wrote down the cake is a lie. There is no spoon. Johnny flipped out, they put him in a rubber room. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Started to carve my initials into a 150-foot tree. Forgot who I was, where I was, cut my hand and it began to bleed. Was only looking to leave my mark in the bark in the park, now I'm in agony. I have no name. My legacy is written in the sparks in your brain. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Johnny crumpled up, threw away his list of things to do. Instead he got to jotting down his lifeblood legacy manifesto. Live by principles of peace, mix it with charity. Don't leave the next generation a world of scarcity. Johnny wasn't a commie, he was my fellow man. Johnny wasn't a commie, he was my fellow man. Johnny wasn't a Nazi, he was a firebrand. Johnny wasn't a Nazi, he was a firebrand. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call